People you talking about, they spent money on white women. They set up bars and they went playing pool and golf for $1,000 a hole, and they were known to make millions and millions when there wasn't no high taxes, and they were not hindered by white America. They were allowed to see the white America has completely closed all the doors on me. I'm not allowed to work in America, out of America. I was stopped right in my prime just when I started making money. So you can't compare me with nobody like Joe Lewis or nobody.
And if you are black, if you are brown, if you are indigenous, and if you are poor, this system is rigged and it is rotten to the core, and we gonna unbreak it. That's it. And that's all.
That other kind of socialism that revolutionizes the workplace, brings democracy to the workplace for the first time.
So that's one way. And then the other thing is, in my more optimistic days, he's such a perfect endpoint of everything that is toxic and dysfunctional about the United States, about capitalism, about the 80s, that maybe this is the final sort of disgusting burst before we evolve or change it to something better.
Talk about some things about why we need a new party. So I thought that'd be a good way to kind of do this. Why do we need a new party? We need a new party because both parties suck. Job.
What are they talking about? Fortified. Are you fortified for the long run? Do you have your cemetery clothes on? Are you coffin ready to live and die for something bigger than you, like a fundamental transformation of a capitalist civilization?
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Radical Democracy Show. I'm your host, Kamali Rose, back after a little vacation. Been away for a little over a week. And so just, a lot of news to be getting back to, and really just wanted to get back a little bit sooner in the week, but just really, honestly, just so many stories to go through and not really knowing where to start with, some very heavy stories that we've had in the news recently. Of course, the multiple mass shootings over the course of the past 2 weeks, or the course of the past week, I should say. I mean, we've had 7 mass shootings in this country over the past 7 days. So we've had a mass shooting per day. And we've had 102 mass shootings in the U.S. this year alone already, and we're barely, we're not even all the way through March yet. So we're averaging a mass shooting per day in this country, as we do every year, it seems, for, since I was a kid, seemingly, since for the past decade at least, it's seemingly been this way. And you think you get a little bit of a break during a pandemic, but it hasn't eased up really. And we are, luckily, there's less people gathering. So, you feel like a benefit of that is going to be less chances for people to be harmed and put in harm's way like that. But over the past 2 weeks, we've had, there was last week in Atlanta, there was a mass shooting, white supremacist. It was largely an anti-Asian, hate crime, as far as I'm concerned. I don't care what the news media wants to say, otherwise, or their debate about it. It's clear as day. This is, anti-Asian. It's racially, it's racist motivation, misogynist as well. And, I believe, so there were 8 victims. There were eight people killed in the shootings in Atlanta and right outside of Atlanta. And 7 of those people were women. 6 of them were women of Asian descent. I believe 4 were Korean, and I don't know the ethnicity of the other victims off the top of my head. And then we had, just yesterday in Boulder, Colorado, there was a mass shooting at a grocery store in Boulder, Colorado. 10 people were killed, and the shooter was taken alive in both of these situations. The shooter in the second case was he was also a white male, but he was he was an American Muslim back, religiously, but he was naturalized from Syria, and that's what we know so far. I'm not going to say either of their names. I'm not going to say the names of these shooters. I'm not going to be showing their images, because I just don't see a reason to try to give them any kind of attention. That's in a lot of these cases, these people are seeking attention and see the news coverage of these mass shootings and want to use it as a way to gain infamy. And I'm going to try to be responsible in not trying to allow that to happen and be a platform for that. So you won't hear me say their names or show their images if I can help it. And we'll see, if folks let me know how you feel about that in the comments, by all means. I've seen other organizations that will say the name one time, show an image, sometimes one time, and not do it again after that. So, I may do something like that just for people to have information, to be able to provide information, but not to try to, to help these people gain any kind of notoriety or infamy. And so, the situation with these mass shootings is that when you live in this country, sadly, you start to grow accustomed to this. It becomes, you grow an immunity to it. You build up a tolerance to these things. And it's like, if people aren't, if it's not tens of people dying, it seems like it barely registers to most people. When you're not talking, when just 2 or 3 people are killed, when it's just 1 or 2 people killed, 4 or 5 people shot, it seems like people we don't even notice those anymore in this country. And it's really just these, like, 10, when 5+ people are being killed, and or it's a string of killings in rapid succession. It's like it has to be these it's just the level of carnage that has to be attained. I don't even know how to describe it for people to even notice these things and be outraged by this. In this country, in America, we've built up a horrendous tolerance to these these situations, these massacres at this point. And so it's notable that these have even raised attention. And the thing is that right now we have Democrats in control of the White House and the Senate and the House of Representatives, so full control over Congress and the White House. And we know where the Republicans stand on this. They're horrific. They're monstrous on this. They're bought and paid for by the NRA. They are a wing of the NRA at this point, and they will do nothing. They will do nothing to protect people from these sorts of this kind of violence, and that has become just almost second nature in this country. And so we know where the Republicans stand on this. And the thing about the Democrats, the Republicans, they tell you outright where they stand on this issue, and they let you know outright they don't give a damn about how many people die. They believe that the person's right to own a gun is that freedom is more important than another person's freedom to live and to just have a right to continue to live and to continue to exist. They don't care so much about that freedom, that liberty, as much as they care about the freedom of guns. Why? Because the gun lobby's got a lot of money, right? So they take plenty of cash from the gun lobby, and the Republicans let you know exactly where they stand. But the Democrats have a thing where they claim to be on your side, right? They claim that they're on your side, and but it's clearly at this point, it's platitudes. It's all performative. It's all rhetoric, and it's empty. It's empty rhetoric. It's just virtue signaling at this point, with no action to back it up. And people are tired or just fed up with this. How many of these things, these mass shootings, massacres do we have to have in a week, in a day, in a year, in a decade, for them to finally do something about just basic common sense legislation that most people agree with, right? I mean, criminal background checks, mandatory background checks for all gun purchases. Like, you don't think that somebody should have to have a background check to make sure that they are not convicted of a violent crime in the past in order to, own a gun, at least be able to show that they've, completed some amount of, psychological evaluation and training in order to, be able to earn back that privilege, because these aren't rights. These are privileges. All of these things are privileges, right? And so we get to decide which privileges we want. And we cut it off somewhere, right? With gun rights. People aren't allowed to own rocket launchers, right? So we're not saying nobody, I'm of the left, where I don't think that, banning guns is the solution. Like, I'm not talking about banning guns and taking everybody's guns away. That's not the solution that I advocate for. I do think that we can have a ban on military style assault weapons, right? These things that are essentially military grade weapons. These are human killing machines. They are not, you do not need a weapon that can be turned to an automatic rifle or an automatic, a fully automatic rifle to hunt deer, right? Or to hunt whatever you need to hunt. Like, you're not a real hunter if you need a fully automatic weapon in order to hunt your game. Like, you're not a real hunter, all right? And I'm not, you're not a serious hunter. I'm not addressing you. What these weapons are about, they were designed to maim and destroy human beings, right? They were designed as human killing machines. And these are weapons of war that we're talking about. And we're talking about, people are just calling for a common sense, one, mandatory background checks on all gun purchases, and then two, a ban on assault weapons, these military style assault weapons, fully automatic rifles, and high capacity magazines, right? Because it allows these people to kill so many people in such a short amount of time. And if you read some of the stories or see some of the images of people's bodies after these bullets rip through them, they're so devastating to the human body. So, ER doctors have talked about this. Until you've seen what these weapons can do, you really, you shouldn't be, you shouldn't be, so adamantly against some of these reforms that people are talking about. And so it's sad how we have to talk about this and have to tiptoe around this issue because, people on the right will just accuse the left of, oh, you're just trying to take away people's guns, when really the reality is nobody's trying to do that here. We're saying we draw the line somewhere about what we think that people should be allowed to, own as a weapon. And we don't say you're not allowed to own grenades and rocket launchers and tanks, like in drones, as an individual private citizen, right? And so the idea, and it says in the Second Amendment, a well-regulated militia, right? It's the only place in the entire Constitution that specifically mentions the word regulation, right? It's the only place where you see the word regulate in the entire Constitution, right? So the one regulation that they definitely that the founding fathers believed in, the one place they thought you needed to make sure you regulated was the ownership of firearms. And they said, it was for the purpose of a well-regulated militia. And if what are the regulations? Back then it was muskets they were dealing with. They weren't thinking about people owning, people aren't allowed to own nuclear bombs or bombs at all, right? And so we draw the line somewhere. We're saying let's move the line a little bit further back where it used to be, right? And so we don't need people to be able to, you shouldn't need assault these military style weapons. But the sad thing is, and the reality is, the Democrats are going to do nothing about this. They're going to virtue signal. They're going to spout out empty platitudes and talk about what they believe is, and how everybody deserves to live, and thoughts and prayers. And we'll get all of that kind of rhetoric from the Democrats. But what we're not going to get, unfortunately, I believe, is any form of action. And it's just based on what I've seen out of them already. I have no hope. I'm not encouraged in any way. There's just no reason for me to believe, as a casual observer of our political system, I guess a slightly above casual observer of our political system, I just don't see where the Democrats don't have the courage to what procedurally what would need to be done to get around a filibuster. You're talking about if you're not going to get around a filibuster, you're talking about having to get 10 Republicans to vote in favor of whatever, anti-gun legislation is what they're going to frame it as, but it's really just going to be any kind of common sense gun reform. You're not going to be able to pick up 10 Republican votes on it. So you're going to need, the only way that the Democrats could do it is with only 50 votes. The only way they can do it with 50 votes is if, for legislation like this that doesn't impact the budget, you cannot do it through budget reconciliation. So that process of budget reconciliation is out the window on this. The only way to pass this type of legislation is by what they call nuking the filibuster. They have to get rid of the filibuster. And the filibuster is a process that allows any senator to just say, where they used to have to stand up and talk through it, but now they don't even have to stand up and talk through it. They just say, I intend to commit a filibuster, to do a filibuster against this legislation. And then from that point forward, you have to get 60 votes in order to overcome that, what they call cloture. And so the Democrats have the ability, because they control the House and the Senate right now. If they wanted to, they could pass legislation that removes the filibuster. They can get rid of that rule of the filibuster, and that would allow them to pass legislation with 50 votes. And they could do it if they really believed in this. If the Democratic Party truly believed in protecting people from these mass shootings, they would do that, right? If they truly believed in it, but they won't. They're not going to. They haven't done so already. And they're really not going to. If they do, get rid of the filibuster, it will be at the last minute when nothing will get accomplished afterward. I hope they prove me wrong. Trust me, I really do. I truly hope they prove me wrong on this, but I just don't think that they will, sadly. And so that's that's where we are at this point. We'll have to wait and see. But I know I believe I know how this is going to turn out, sadly, and it's not for the better. We're going to all be outraged by it. This has overwhelming support. These type of regulations. 97% of people support mandatory background checks on weapons on gun purchases. 97% of people in this country, but the 3% that don't are unfortunately the members of Congress and everybody that belongs to the NRA. and they have complete control over this situation. Typically they have complete control of the situation. Sadly, they do not under this circumstance, right? In this circumstance, the Democrats have total control here, and they have all the ability in the world, and they are not bought by the NRA. We know that they are not bought by the NRA. Sadly, they don't have political courage, right? They just lack political courage in any kind of real way. And they, in getting rid of the filibuster would open up the door for them to be expected to pass other legislation that they don't want to have an excuse not to pass. So they need a filibuster in place again until the last minute, until they're ready to, lose in the midterms and Republicans are going to take back control. Then all of a sudden they'll get rid of the filibuster, like they started the process of with Harry Reid in getting rid of the filibuster for Supreme Court and federal judicial nominations. And eventually, they started the process, and then Mitch McConnell completed the process of getting rid of the filibuster under Trump, and they passed, historic numbers of an unprecedented number of judicial picks, federal judicial picks under Trump. And so we have a heavily conservative judiciary, and we run the risk in 2022 and 2024 of losing the House and the Senate and the White House to Republicans because of the lack of action from the Democratic Party, unfortunately, on issues like this. And so it's frustrating to say the least. And one thing that came out of this that I thought that just, one thing I wanted to note on this too was something I noticed in mainstream media that they did with the Atlanta shootings, because it was at some Asian massage parlors, and there are some massage parlors that are essentially they perform, sex work services in addition to the massage parlor services that they, advertise. And this is, so they kind of are a front for a sex working, a sex work business. So one thing that I noticed in some of the mainstream media was that they really took this as an opportunity to attack the sex workers, and I just thought it was a weird flex from the mainstream media. So I wanted to just show you what kind of headlines I was seeing out of this. And you can see, like, out of New York Times, they said the killings targeted an industry with a history of concerns about sex trafficking. So this is like right in the wake of this, and instead of focusing on the attacker, as they do whenever it's like a Muslim person that committed some attack, or a black person that committed some crime, they always focus on the person and their whole history. And even if it's some small petty non-violent crime, they were caught smoking weed or something, they run the whole history, and every little bad thing, every mistake this person ever made. Just want to say a quick what's up to the Vanguard. I see you there. What's up, folks? What's up, Zach and Gavin? Appreciate the shout out, and love stopping by. Great work they're doing over there. Definitely check out the Vanguard and the work that they're doing over there if you haven't already. Great stuff over there from our comrades. Some great coverage. Love their work on recently. They talked to some folks, some ex-volunteers from the Movement for a People's Party, that I think is, very important work. And so definitely check that out. But getting back to it, the mainstream media, New York Times decided to, Washington Post did stories like this. It wasn't just like major outlets, but also like local outlets too, came in with this like anti-sex worker framing of this situation. And it's just weird, because it's like the problem is these by and large young white men are have access to weaponry, have access to these weapons of war essentially, and are being somehow moved into these situations, right? And I think that a lot of that we can talk about, people don't want to hear about it, but the reality that we got to talk about is, like, typically people that are well off, that have their basic needs met, right? people that are like wealthy and doing all right in life, people, you don't see them as the mass shooters, right? It's not wealthy or well off or people that are in a good economic situation. Typically these are poor people or financially stressed people that are and men. We got to be real. It's men that react to these situations with violence. And if we're really going to solve the problem, I mean, there are other countries that have a similar number of guns per person, but they don't have the same number of mass shootings. And I think that it's also about it's not just the guns, but it's also about the way that we, the economic situation and the economic strain that some of these people face. And then there's other social, cultural issues that we have to get around too, just the history of racism, xenophobia, the demagoguery, and those sorts of things that we saw under the Trump, administration, but also through all of America's past in our history, in the history of this country, right? What they've done to, indigenous people, Black people, people from South America, Latin America. We see how this country is treating those people throughout history. So, this was just a weird flex because they're always find a way to frame things around essentially sort of blaming the victims in the situation. It's kind of a form of victim blaming. And, compare this in your mind to the fact that there was a mass shooting at a grocery store, just days later, 6 days after this, there would be a mass shooting in a grocery store in Boulder, Colorado, that kills more people. More people die in that. Is anybody saying anything about how the grocery workers, there's a danger, they lead a dangerous, job that needs to be criminalized in some way, or to frame it all as like sex trafficking and to paint it with this picture of sex trafficking is just it's anti-sex work. Of course, we on the left, we don't want to see any form of sort of abuse or violence, exploitation of people, of workers, of any human being, but also of workers for sure. And so we certainly don't want to see, we don't support anything. We would want any kind of this, sex trafficking is a violent form of coercion that certainly does not square with, my principles and ideology. And I am in every way against it and would want to protect people from it. But I think that to turn it around and try to frame this issue, and attach, sex trafficking to this conversation when the issue was some angry young white guy just went in and murdered a bunch of these women who were just working, right? Just working. And they I don't know why does there have to be a narrative about sex trafficking in this, as if they're claiming that these parlors where the women were shot were somehow associated with sex trafficking when there's no evidence of that whatsoever. And so to attach them to that like that, I think it dehumanizes the victims of this crime in a way. And again, it wasn't just the New York Times, it was also the Washington Post as well. Again, these are major outlets here that are doing this. And I don't think they have really any good excuse to be framing it like this. So here's a headline out of the Washington Post. Part of the massage industry is built on hate crimes against Asian women. I mean, this is, this was March 22nd, the other one was March 18th. Like, this is happening right after these events. And this is the narrative that they respond with. And, I think that, let's just reading through, some of these articles, you can see that, they talk about how, at least in this article in the Washington Post, as you read through, like I thought that this at least dug in and showed how some of at least talked about the way that it actually ends up playing out when we try to criminalize this behavior and police this behavior. And so, this person talks about the fact that they regularly attended police raids on massage businesses in a large Midwestern state to provide both basic and continued advocacy for the women there. While some of these raids focused on arresting Johns for partaking in prostitution or else cracking down on business owners for fraudulent practices or human trafficking, the vast majority of the time, the women ended up in jails themselves. Part of my job was to pick up these women from jail after their release. Often this was my job because they literally knew no one else in the state. While it was often acknowledged by law enforcement that the women were probably victims of exploitation, if not human and sex trafficking, many of the raids I attended were still carried out in a manner that further victimized and traumatized the women. Once this meant pushing all of the women into the street first thing in the morning, shivering in their night clothes. Another time, 2 Asian women at a parlor raid were held in the back of a police car, handcuffed, while one sobbed and began to have problems breathing. In both instances, local media had arrived and the women struggled to maintain anonymity. So they say, treatment of this kind and then subsequent arrest of women were common, despite the fact that almost every woman I spoke to had experienced some form of violence herself, almost exclusively at the hands of a white man at a massage business. Not once had I heard of a woman reporting the violence she experienced to the police. And it was understandable. Most interactions they had with police or interactions they knew of resulted in their arrest and sometimes permanent confiscation of their IDs, cell phone and electronics, credit cards, and cash. Many told me that the violence they experienced was their own fault for falling for the lies of a trafficker or exploitative employer. They thought that reporting it would cost them deportation or loss of legal status. They didn't speak English and they didn't know whom to trust or where to go. And the thing about this is that, sex workers, it's definitely a form of, it's a form of work that in every form of work under a capitalist system is exploitative by its nature. Exploitation is very specifically defined by Marxists as any situation where you have one person extracting the surplus of labor from another person. That's when you extract the surplus of someone else's labor and you take that for yourself. That action is what Marxists refer to as an act of exploitation. And so all capitalist, systems, all capitalist dynamics are and relationships are exploitative inherently, right? There's by its very nature, there's somebody, the employer, the board of directors, a handful of executives and major shareholders who are the employers, and everyone else is an employee there, and they have the ability to, they have all the power over those employees, and they are able to extract the surplus of their labor, and so they are being exploited as well. And sex work is no different than any other form of work. And so there is a inherent danger, and and of course, like these people, the reason why these women are more susceptible to violence is often because they are pushed into the margins, right? They're not, because of the criminalization of sex work, they are unable to report when there's violence done against them. They can't report it because of the way that we treat these people as if they're somehow criminals. Then it deters them from reporting any kind of crimes against them, and so it makes it so that these people are more vulnerable. By criminalizing the behavior, we don't make these people safer somehow. It's a Puritanesque, way of trying to feel like we are somehow morally pure than these other people. But the reality is, sex work is work, and these people shouldn't have their jobs, criminalized in that way. And so they, because all it does is it pushes people further into the margins and makes the work more dangerous is all. And so just, I thought it was a really slimy thing for the mainstream media to be doing. New York Times, Washington Post to be coming out with these, anti-sex worker articles in the wake of this, violent massacre against them. It really just rings and smacks of victim blaming, where we really should be showing solidarity with these workers and showing how they're being exploited, but not in any way that's any different than any other capitalist enterprise, save for the fact that it is criminalized, right? So they're exploited in a way similar to sort of people that are involved in illicit drug trades, right? Those people end up being, there's high rates of violence because when something is, a behavior is criminalized, then it is driven into the shadows, right? And when disputes would be solved in a courtroom, under a legal system, instead have to be solved in the streets with violence and guns, and so they, it's not. We're not helping these people by criminalizing sex work. We should be repealing Sesta Fosta and protecting sex workers, making sex work, recognizing sex work as work. There was special exceptions in like the CARES Act, and some of these relief bills have special exceptions carved out in them that say that if you're a sex worker, even though we're going to give unemployment benefits to all gig workers, if you're a sex worker, you are not allowed. There was a special exclusion against sex workers in the CARES Act, and I believe in subsequent relief bills. I should double check and find out if it was in the Biden bill, but that's the situation going on. So just a really gross narrative from the mainstream media, but what we've come to expect from them. So just want to show some solidarity with sex workers, and not try to. It's just like it has a certain like anti-Asian tone about it in general, and misogynistic, and again just anti-worker is what it really comes down to at the end of the day. All right, so let me keep pushing along. Got some comments. Tammy says the headline is low-key saying the spa attacks were vigilante justice because it shed light on sex trafficking. Shaking my head. Exactly. Like this is like, it's like they're like supporting or condoning what the actions of this terrorist. Tammy says yes, because the murderer who planned and executed his plan to kill the sex workers at the spa or anyone in the way definitely had the interest of saving these women in mind. Exactly. Like, you act like, oh, he was concerned about the sex trafficking, and that's why he went out and murdered 8 women, or 8 people, 7 women, right? Like, because he was so concerned about sex trafficking and the pain that the harm that it was doing to these women. Absolutely not. So Tammy goes on to say the risk of deportation in ICE only further enables the opportunity for exploitation in the human trafficking industry. If they want to talk about human trafficking, then they need to own up to ICE's role. Exactly. Like ICE was created in 2001, and it did not exist when I was growing up. It did not exist, just 20 years ago, ICE did not exist. This isn't some long-standing thing that we need. It was created in the wake of 9/11. And so we need to go back to a time where we can literally just abolish ICE. Just do not have any organization, any law enforcement organization that has the authority to go around, deem anyone a threat to our national security because of their immigration status and drag them out of their homes or arrest and detain these people. So let's just get rid of that Gestapo force that we allow in our country. They're very new, and we need to abolish ICE outright. And that's, and Joe Biden has the authority to do this. The Democrats have the ability to do this, and they just refuse. They simply do not want to. So Tammy says, how many children in cages have gone missing? Not to mention all those Black and or indigenous girls and women who have been missing over the years, etc. Exactly. Yeah, because there's like human trafficking literally happening like through ICE. Like we see, like ICE has been, charged with, and it has a court case pending against them for slavery, for rape, of the detainees that they have. So these people they're able to abuse this power. We literally saw children being trafficked, in places that were, unreported, and people were seeing, these people moving children in the middle of the night under Trump, and people, we just allowed that to happen, really. So there's a lot of instances of that happening for sure. Thanks for that. Great point. Tammy says they want to emphasize the juicy details of potential sex work at these spas so that when the murderer's sex addiction is brought up, because white mass shooters always get their life story told, he can be framed at least somewhat sympathetically. He just, quote, had a bad day. And by emphasizing that the majority of victims were potential sex worker, it helps to remove the sympathy for them. Exactly, because what they're doing here is they're trying to dehumanize these workers. They're trying to dehumanize them and devalue their lives and detach you further from them, so that exactly this is the sort of white supremacy playing out in front of our eyes, where in white male supremacy really playing out in front of our eyes, where it's like, oh, this guy, this just had a bad day, but these sex workers that are just inherently problematic and an issue, and unclean and unpure, and just by existing. And again, there's no evidence that these women were sex trafficked. There's no evidence of that whatsoever. So to talk about sex trafficking in the wake of this, it paints these people with a label that just we do not know needs to apply to them. There are people that choose, to do that work. And we very may well have people that under a truly free system choose to go into that line of work if that's what they so choose, or to do that. People, there are some people that have sex all the time, right? And you can have sex with as many people as you want for free, but as soon as you try to charge something for it, apparently that's when it becomes illegal. This country that talks about free markets and free enterprise, apparently it stops right at your own body. Like, that's where it just stops for an adult, a consenting adult, apparently. All right, any more comments we need to get to? All right, keep pushing along, y'all. Like I said, I'm back after a while. Please hit the like button down below, subscribe to the channel, share this out, and help us grow this platform. We're going to talk about it later today, but left channels are being suppressed, and I definitely see it in the views and in my channel. It just doesn't seem like, for all the subscribers that we have, it just doesn't feel like people get notifications when we go live. I know we went live late tonight, and this is a weird time for us to go live, so I'm not totally saying it with this, but this is way lower than usual, and it's definitely been happening all over left independent media. And so help us grow the channel by sharing this out. And yeah, and I'm a little rusty, so I also recognize that too. So, all right. Let me pull up our next story. All right, let me see what I got. Sorry. Okay, I see. So... actually, yeah, you know what? I'll just do that story. I'll just jump and do that story. Because why not? Actually, no, sorry. All right, yes, I'll do it. All right, let's do it. So give me 1 sec just to pull up the clip here. And just want to say what up. Great to see you in there. What's up? What up to FL as well? I saw you in there. Great to see y'all. Really appreciate y'all dropping by for my my little welcome back stream here. Been on a little hiatus, little vacation. So it's always great to be back, but I'm feeling a little rusty, and so hence the rough start here. Okay, let's keep chugging along here. So Jordan Chariton of Status Coup is an independent left-wing investigative journalism outlet founded by Jordan Chariton, former investigative journalist for TYT. And he really, he does some really crucial work. He's done really crucial work on Flint, Michigan. I mean, he stayed in Flint and kept going back, and he broke stories in Flint, talked to all the residents there, stayed with them, throughout the years, even after the mainstream media disappeared from there, when it was no longer politically convenient. He really stuck on the story, and I think his work is what has led to even any sort of charges happening against the government officials there in Flint, even though the charges weren't nearly strong enough. But they've done some really important work there. They've done, they travel all around the country. Jordan travels all around the country with his crew, and they interview people they've gone around through the primaries and rallies. I was actually interviewed by Jordan Chariton in New Hampshire at a Bernie rally, which was a really cool experience before I started this channel, and kind of honestly was a part of the influence for the channel in the first place, because of the reaction that I got in the comments from my parents on Status Coup. And so it's appreciate the work that Jordan does, and it's again investigative journalism, real journalism that he's doing, and breaking stories. Broke a story, important story on Donna Brazile and how she had given the questions in 2016 to Hillary Clinton before the debate against Bernie Sanders, and broke stories like that, but broke many important stories. And he recently went on a rant explaining how his channel is being suppressed by YouTube and on other platforms as well, Facebook, even Twitter. And he's noticed a significant drop in his views and the activity on his videos. And I've honestly, I mean, I've experienced the same thing. It's hard to, from what you hear and what you see, the rate of growth for channels, going back 5 years is just totally different than it is now. It seems like if you're talking about the sort of, news from a left-wing perspective, it just seems like it's so difficult to grow at this stage. And especially when you're talking about certain issues, certain racial issues, anti-capitalist rhetoric, anti-police rhetoric. Often it gets really, they start the YouTube and these other major tech corporations have done a lot to try to, influence that and try to suppress independent journalists and independent outlets, and to promote what they consider, the mainstream sort of reputable outlets, like, the same folks that pushed lies about weapons of mass destruction and torture, and advocated for torture, and advocated for the Iraq war, which turned out to be an illegal war. And these same people are considered, these same outlets, the New York Times, the Washington Post, CNN, MSNBC, Fox News, they're seen as the reputable outlets, while outlets like ours are, seen as fringe or too radical. And YouTube is doing a lot of work to suppress our channels. And so Jordan Chariton went on a little rant here about this, and I thought that it was really important. And what's happened with his channel is really significant. He's seen a steep decline in viewership of his videos in the past few weeks, and it's very noticeable. And so I'll just let him talk about it, and then we'll chat a bit on the other side.
But it is abundantly clear, and YouTube has basically opened.
Sorry, that's me and my always playing things at faster speeds than normal. Sorry, y'all.
Said this. It is abundantly clear that YouTube has, and it's not just YouTube, by the way, it's Twitter, Facebook. We don't even bother with anymore because nobody even sees us there. They have rigged, and I think you kind of lose people with the term algorithm. So let's just forget algorithm. They have rigged their system. They have rigged their system. This platform has rigged its system to basically elevate, meaning more prominently show MSNBC, CNN. Like, 10 years ago, Wolf Blitzer would get like 1,000 views. Now he's getting hundreds of thousands. Did people suddenly start loving Wolf Blitzer on YouTube? And they are doing this. They are essentially rigging the algorithm to flood your feed to, if a Jimmy Dore video ends, instead of it going to another Jimmy Dore video or going to another channel that's similar to Jimmy Dore, it goes to like Rachel Maddow. Do you not see what they're doing? I mean, literally, we had John, our cameraman, live from a Breonna Taylor, the 1-year anniversary rally of her murder. We have 108,000 subscribers. We maxed out at 150 live viewers. That's not because people don't care about Breonna Taylor a year after her murder, still without justice. It's because people don't see that we're live. People don't even know we're live. I mean, John was live from a rally in New York City covering New York workers rallying in solidarity with the Amazon workers in Alabama trying to unionize. I don't even think we got over 100 live viewers live. It's not possible for a channel with this size unless the majority of its subscribers aren't seeing when they're live, aren't getting the shorter videos. We're not recommended. And why this is much bigger than status quo. Of course, like we are status quo, so we're interested in what's happening to us. But why this is much bigger than status quo. You can't actually have change in America or any country. You cannot actually have change if the problems, if the corruption, if the injustices are being hidden from the public. That's what YouTube is doing. You know, when I do an interview on the water crisis in Jaxn, Mississippi, and it gets 600 views, well, who is that hurting? Yes, it's hurting me. It's hurting status quo because we're not getting any views, meaning we can't make any money and grow our business. But it's hurting Mississippi. It's hurting the people of Jaxn who don't have clean water. When YouTube throttles and hides live streams and shorter videos on Amazon's union busting, or Amazon literally having employees conducting COVID testing. We broke that story. 38-year-old Pashawn Brown suddenly died at the age of 38, didn't have any health problems because, well, I don't want to say because we don't know if she had COVID because the family couldn't afford an autopsy. But we broke that story that Amazon had this woman, a worker, testing other workers and has workers COVID testing other.
All right, so that was one clip there from Jordan Chariton. I just wanted to play one other quick part of this and before I chat. Here it goes.
This should be treated as a scam.
Again, me and my speed. Sorry, y'all.
Handle. The fact that YouTube, the fact that Twitter, the fact that Facebook are essentially picking winners and losers and burying alternative voices. Let's not just talk about the term progressive. Let's not just say they're burying progressive. They're trying to bury anti-war voices. They're trying to bury anti-capitalist voices. They're trying to bury, anti-fossil fuel voices.
That's all
They're
us.
trying to bury anti-Wall Street voices.
That's all us.
They're trying to bury anti-police
That's
voices.
us.
You can't call your company YouTube if in reality it's FuTube. And I understand that outlets need to, monitor extremism and white supremacy and all those things. That's fine. I'm not saying let neo-Nazis run rampant all over the internet, but they have used that as an excuse to basically bury independent media. And let's also not be naive, folks. YouTube has a financial interest in burying independent outlets. Why is that? Because YouTube put all of its apples into YouTube TV. You know what YouTube TV is? For many years, and by the way, my old employer, the Young Turks, put a lot of its apples on YouTube TV. And frankly, YouTube TV has been a colossal failure. So when I hear people responding to the tweets and responding to this about, well, Jordan, go to Rockfin, go to Twitch, go to this. Yeah, we're doing all those things. Right now, we're working on a strategy to start doing more stuff exclusively on Twitch. But the point is, we should not simply accept this because it's not right. Listen, if there was no YouTube algorithm, if they were not burying us and lifting CNN and Fox News and all these other channels, we'd be at 500,000 subscribers very easily right now. You want to know how I know that? Because when I was at the Young Turks in 2016 and 2017, I built the fastest growing channel they ever had. It wasn't because I'm so wonderful. It was because there's a huge hunger and demand for actual living, breathing journalism. There's a huge hunger and demand for journalists to leave their studios and go to Flint and Standing Rock and Mississippi and Texas and all the places we've been. I could give you a whole long list over the last 3 years. We've been where no one else is going because we give a damn and we are journalists. We're not just looking to do commentary from our studio. I'm not knocking those who only do that, but there is a dire hunger and a dire need for this kind of journalism. But the thing is, how are you supposed to do that journalism if there's no guarantee people could see it? I know for a fact, if we would have started this channel, let's say in 2014, 2015, before YouTube changed all of this algorithm stuff, before YouTube rigged its entire algorithm to basically bury independent news and, blow CNN and MSNBC, because that's what's going on here, we probably would be over 1 million subscribers by now.
All right. So I think that pretty, that thoroughly covers it. I let it play out a little bit longer than I was intending, but what he said there definitely resonates with me as somebody that has been trying to build a channel now for going on a year. Actually, I mean, I took a bit of a hiatus shortly after Bernie dropped out of the primary. So after what was it, April of last year. So we're going on a year since I first started the channel, and at least with this political, talking about politics, and I've seen the very, very, very slow growth that has happened over the course of that past year, and the times where it sometimes it'll speed up a little bit, but often just completely falls off a cliff, and even goes in the reverse direction where I'm losing subs, multiple subs a day, and so. This is real. Independent media is being suppressed. There's no doubt about it. I thought that it was really, an important point that Jordan Chariton's making here. He has a call to action later in the video where he makes a call to action to people like Crystal Ball and Kyle Kalinske and other folks with large platforms to draw attention to this, to use their platform to try to call attention to this problem and call out YouTube, because this is unacceptable, and this is not what freedom of the press looks like. If we have one single major corporation, Google, able to be the decider of what news what news entities are uplifted and which ones are suppressed, and we just can't allow that, because today it's Google, but do they have the best of intentions, and what are their intentions? And typically those intentions align with corporations and with upholding the status quo, and the status quo is not working for the masses of people right now. And so we can't have that, and we can't support that. So we got to speak out when it's happening, wherever it's happening. And so I gotta, just wanted to show some solidarity with Jordan. And I've actually, like I said, I made an appearance, just like I just happened to be interviewed by Jordan Chariton on the on Status Coup before, when I was during the primaries. It was actually about, what was it, like a year ago? It was it was over a little over a year ago. It was in February 2020, and it was right after literally the New Hampshire primary had just wrapped up, the votes and all counting the votes and everything. Bernie had just won New Hampshire. We were sort of riding that high. He was going into Nevada, for the next election, in which he would end up winning, and we were all, looking forward to that and expecting that. And Jordan Chariton, I ended up doing a quick interview with him. I'll play a clip from the interview. I think this clip, I think, is me maybe getting a prediction half right and half wrong about what was going to happen to Bernie. I believe that's in this clip. And then, just doing a shout out to Jordan Chariton and the work that he does. So let me I'll play a clip real quick. This is me on Status Coup a year ago. Oh, this was a different me. I was so hopeful back then. This is weird, seeing myself in myself. We'll see if I do this, how long I do this for.
Last question. Nevada next, South Carolina next. I think this is a real litmus test for Bernie and the progressive movement. I think if he wins Nevada, I mean, Bloomberg could throw $1 billion if he wants, but if he wins Nevada, that's the first 3 states victorious. That's a lot more diverse population. What's on the line looking at Nevada?
Yeah, I think that Nevada, especially, the Latino vote is huge in Nevada. And so in South Carolina, the black vote is huge. So I think that we're going to see, how his support in those marginalized communities really shows up. We've had 2 of the whitest states in the country so far. And now it's a chance to see. And he's done it. He showed that the ground game that they have is amazing. The ground game, the outreach to marginalized communities is amazing. Chuck Rocha, the Latino outreach director for Bernie Sanders campaign. He's amazing. The way that he breaks down these communities, the way that he understands what's going on the ground, and the way that they distribute their resources is so efficient. I mean, I was out there canvassing today, and I saw how it works from the inside. You know, I was canvassing out yesterday. I came up from Massachusetts to New Hampshire. This is what they do. They have a lot of energy, and people all over the country with this energy. And so I think we're going to see. I saw somebody today. I met somebody today that's planning to go down to South Carolina and canvass down there, leaving from New Hampshire soon. They're planning to go to Nevada. So I think that you know we're going to see that energy. We're going to get a real chance to draw that clear line in the sand. And then from there, it's Super Tuesday, and they're not going to be able to do anything about it. I just want to say one more thing. If you haven't already, make sure you go to statuscoup.com/join and you join and you subscribe. All right. Yes, they need the support and independent media. What you do is amazing. Thank you for the coverage of Flint. I mean, you're a cut above the rest, you know.
Nice,
and so
Andrew.
yeah, no, I think that you guys are amazing. Keep doing what you're doing. You know, you're an amazing resource for you know our movement and the country at large, really honestly. And so just keep doing what you're doing. You're starting small. You know, I know that you're coming up from all that, you know, whatever. And so I love to see the momentum that you guys are gaining. And yeah, I'm really happy to see that, and really happy that you guys are getting out there and doing the real reporting that's needed, and not this, you know, frivolous, you know, BS. It's the on the ground, the things that are affecting people's lives. So thank you so much for your coverage in Flint. It was amazing.
I didn't even pay him to say that.
No, absolutely not. No. But you can. If I need a job, I'm unemployed right now. So if you guys got internships, anything someday, keep on subscribing. Let's get, what are we at? 1,300, 1,400. You know, I'm a software engineer too. You know, I can do some website work.
You want to know about startup life? This fucking thing. Where's that fucking thing? That I spent $12,000 on. I got it at a discount. They tell me it's going to work anywhere in America. It will work. Well, it didn't work here tonight. So sometimes, I mean, we probably, because of that fucking thing, we probably, you know, cost us probably $1,000 tonight, but that's okay.
1,500 subscribers, and then 2,000, and then 5,000, and then 10,000. Let's make this thing. You know, we got to support our independent.
How much can people join for?
$5, as low as $5 a month.
Join
all right,
Radical Democracy for $5 a month
please
now too,
make
y'all.
it happen. All right, statuscoup.com/join. Do it now. Don't wait. Do it now.
Support y'all. Statuscoup.com/join.
What's your name again?
Kamali Rose.
Where are you from?
I'm from Massachusetts, Boston.
Yeah,
Right.
thanks, man.
Thanks
Appreciate
for all
it.
the work you do, guys.
Yeah,
Thank
absolutely.
you so much, Jamal, man.
I hope you enjoyed that last video.
All right, so that was me back. I had the interview that I did was much longer. I talked about workplace democracy in it. I went on a whole rant. It was like a whole sidetrack that I did about workplace democracy. Total like non sequitur, just like off topic, but I went in on it, and that's really cool. Angie Gracie says that yes, I do remember this interview, which is awesome. That's really cool. So that was, you know, I did that interview, and then a lot of the comments in there was like, I want to see more of this guy. And that, you know, it was what encouraged me. A really big part of what encouraged me to start this channel. So, Angie says I'm from Massachusetts also. Nice. Awesome. And says Angie also campaigned for Bernie in New Hampshire and Massachusetts also. That's awesome, Angie. Shout out and thank you for all the work that you did. We deserved Bernie. You know, we would have had, you know, student loan debt would be canceled right now. We'd have a $15 minimum wage. I believe it. I believe it that we would have those things, because, you know, his Vice President Nina Turner would not have respected the foolish advice of the Senate parliamentarian, would have overruled that advice. They would have, you know, $15 minimum wage would have passed already. We'd have you know, all federal student loan debt would be canceled at this point. And, you know, advice given, you know, a directive given to the the Attorney General who needs to you know, legalize descheduled cannabis. Like, I think all those steps would have already been taken. So, and we deserved that, and we fought hard for that. And that was it was just such a different time politically. You know, there was so much hope alive then, and that it's just hard to have that same level of enthusiasm. And, you know, that it just goes to show, you know, we've been fighting this fight for a long time, and we're going to have to keep fighting. That's the thing. We're just going to have to keep fighting, and we're going to have to, you know, change tactics and figure out strategy and figure out what the best strategy is. You know, is it going to be electoral politics? My faith has been thoroughly shaken in electoral politics, and I believe less and less in it every day. And I do believe that the way out is going to be through building up grassroots movement, local movements, and building radical democracy into our economy through our workplaces, our housing, and in other, crucial aspects of our lives, just democratizing our economy. So, otherwise, I just, I don't see a way forward. And we're going to listen to some Chris Hedges tonight, who is one of the people that actually often relays the sentiment of like, listen, we got to start being realistic about having hope, right? And I know I love Dr. Cornel West, who says it's not enough to just have hope. You have to be a hope. And I try and I want so desperately to be a hope. Sometimes I don't do shows because I don't feel like I've got it in me to be a hope. And I feel so hopeless and so drained of hope that I don't want to, portray that and perpetuate that. And so I just opt to not do a show sometimes. And I'm going to have to, I'll work on that and try to be able to bring you content more frequently. But I want to be able to be a hope, honestly, and have a hopeful message to give to people. But sometimes we have to be really realistic, because the news is not about entertainment. It's not about, it's not a place to necessarily come to find hope. Really, it's about finding information and knowledge, right? And so that's the real, job that we have to perform here. And that's why it's so crucial, the work of independent media. And so really hate to see what's going on with Jordan Chariton and Status Quo, and got nothing but the utmost respect for what they do. I should holla at Jordan Chariton. Honestly, I think I still got his card floating around here. I know I still got his card somewhere floating around here, and I should hit him up and see if they need any help over there at Status Quo as well. Could do some part-time, some little side gig work, see if I could help them out. And so we'll see. I'll reach out. I should hit them up still. So that was a cool interaction, and that's the kind of work that they do, though. They just go, and that I wasn't, the dude doing this podcast or anything like that. I was just a person, a civilian. And that's the kind of people that they talk to, and they allow us to have a voice. And so we got to support folks like that give a voice to everyday folks. And I need to keep doing more of that here. I was doing it earlier, and then just got caught up with and feeling a little overwhelmed with certain things. And I'm not great. I'm still learning about, guest interactions and things like that, and how to make it work. And so, but I want to eventually make this a call-in show, or do something where I drop a link to the stream. I'm going to start doing that soon with my live streams. I'm going to start to drop a link to the stream, where anyone that wants to like hop on for a couple of minutes and say whatever they need to say, like we'll do kind of like a call-in show, but with video, and we'll do phone calls as well. But I like the idea of doing like a show where people could drop in and be on camera and say what's up and say their little part of whatever they want to talk about, whatever issues are important to people. I'd like to be able to hand the microphone back to the people and allow them to speak whatever their truth is. And so want to do more of that, and having our, folks from the community on. So, look out for more of that. And thanks for all your support. We really appreciate everyone who supports, all of our Coffee supporters, Patreon supporters, like nothing, the utmost love and respect for you and for helping us through this. And just, we need more support. That anyone that can afford to do so, definitely, help out. We that's the only funding that we have. That's the only way we can continue to do this work, is if we're funded. And so, we're trying to build workplace democracy here at Radical Democracy, one worker, one vote on all major decisions. And so if you would like to help support that movement, support independent media, please, for as low as $1 a month, or just one-time donation, coffee.com/radical democracy. Links are in the description box below. We need your support. We need the subscribers. Independent media need your help. You can also sign up on statusquo.com/join and become a member of Status Quo. I think I need to renew my subscription with them, because I was unemployed, and I'm still unemployed, and struggling. And so, but I want to help out and lend some support to a comrade and a fellow independent media, independent left-wing media, and someone that does crucial work that is valuable work that is needed. So it's worth, they deserve the pay. Like, what they're doing over there on Status Quo definitely deserves our support for sure. So hook them up if you can afford it. And if you got anything left over, please support Radical Democracy as well. And you can also support us if you're on Patreon, patreon.com/Radical Democracy. Shout out to 2 of our new Patreon subscribers. Off the top of my head, I think I'm going to say it is Janet. Yes. And Megan. Okay. So Janet S and Megan M, shout out to both of them for subscribing. That is, it's huge, whether it's $1 or $10, or $100 or $1,000, every single dollar helps and helps us moves us a step closer to workplace democracy and to be able to, build a sustainable business. So thank you for everything. Deeply appreciated. I'm going to keep pushing through on some news, but shout out to Angie and really, thanks for everything, for the hard work that you put in New Hampshire, Massachusetts, for the Bernie campaign. It was, it was tough, being on the other side of that, to see all of our hopes dashed and to see where we are now. We knew what we wanted. We knew we deserved Bernie. All right, pushing along. Next story. Okay, they're just passing by. Sorry, we got some background noise. We're just trying to resolve there. Sorry, y'all. Okay, back in action. Next story. All right. Okay, I mentioned Chris Hedges. I should probably do the Chris Hedges then. All right. So Chris Hedges did an amazing interview on Bad Faith Podcast last week. And I wish I could have covered this sooner. I watched it as soon as it dropped, but again, was away on vacation and was trying to not, be immersed in politics for the past week. And so I had to cover this. It's too, it was a really I think anytime Chris Hedges speaks, I think it's valuable he's somebody that I like to listen to. If you're not familiar with Chris Hedges, he is a former New York Times foreign correspondent. He is a Pulitzer Prize winning journalist. He has covered wars, multiple foreign wars, and was, on the ground in Kosovo during the Kosovo War, and he has just decades of experience. He's a former a pastor or preacher. He's so he comes from theological background. He's some sort of religious entity. So he's got tons of experience. He's also a left-wing activist, and he was recently on a guest on the Bad Faith Podcast with Brianna Joy Gray in Virgil, Texas. Brianna Joy Gray is the former national press secretary for Bernie Sanders during his 2020 campaign, in Virgil, Texas, of Chapo Trap House. Have this really great podcast, and had him on to talk about just the direction for the left to move in, and his thoughts on a wide range of topics. And so I tried to. There were a few parts of this interview that I really, there is just too much to pick out, honestly. So go listen to the whole thing. There's a link in the description box under our sources if you want to check out the full interview. Highly recommend it. But I'm going to play a couple of clips. I think I'm going to try to play a couple of clips, but we'll start with one clip that I thought was really important. And this was Chris Hedges talking about his take on AOC and the squad. And what he said here, I think was really poignant and important and worth noting. And so let's take a listen, and then we will come back and discuss.
Right. So all of this is going on. But at the same time, we do have a larger than ever number of genuinely unbought, grassroots funded Democrats, progressives in Congress who did have the power in this moment to clarify the power dynamics, which are so often obscured in Congress. They don't do it. And now the left is in a position where it has to ask itself whether it's willing to make enemies of those people. I mean, I don't want to say make enemies, because that's how they will characterize it, and it's absurd. But to frankly put pressure on those people in a way that,
I think what you're saying is if they don't do it, we got to do it. I don't look at AOC as an enemy. She's been bought. I mean,
Well, what do you mean by that? What do you mean when you say that?
Well, I think her heart is probably in the right place. I don't know her. I never met her. But I don't look at her as an enemy the way I look at, Tom Cotton or somebody, or Mitch McConnell, is just, two of the most venal human beings who ever walked the planet, along with Trump and Stephen Miller, who looks like something out of a Bela Lugosi film. But I think we have to be clear in terms of our understanding of how power works, that these people have been emasculated, and they've shown it. They have decided that their political career is more important than confronting the monolith, and so they're not going to confront it.
Do you really think that's what's going on with people like?
Yeah, Pelosi. These are, forget the public face. And I mean, I work for the New York Times, so I got a good look at what the inside of the machinery looks like. And these people are really vicious, vindictive figures who will destroy you if you cross them. And AOC and everyone's figured that out.
So when someone like AOC says, I would rather be a one-term congressperson, this is what she's saying when she's running. I would rather be a one-term congressperson than to forsake my values. I understand over time, even someone like Biden, who, wasn't, the grand scheme of Congress, didn't come from an affluent family, political family or anything like that. Once you're in there for 30, 40 years, yeah, you're invested. That's how you make your money. But someone like AOC, you're brand new. I, as much as I'm characterized as like being antagonistic to her, I'd be willing to give her a lot more benefit of the doubt than most, because she hasn't invested as much as a lot of other people in playing this game and staying in Congress. So that's part of why it's so confusing and frustrating when people like her, who just a year or two ago were saying, hey, I'd rather be a one-term congressperson than forsake my values. Why aren't we, it's ridiculous that Democrats haven't ever forced a vote on Medicare for all. Like, she's literally just said those things within the past 24 months, is now not choosing to leverage her power. And is it just as simple as, I want to stay in Congress, I am enjoying this $170,000 salary? Yeah,
it's that, and also the belief that my being here is better than my not being here. I mean, they'll rationalize it.
See, I think that's more of it. I think that it's very easy to say, I am doing some good, a good deal of good. And then that's better than me not being here at all, or being replaced by someone who's a lot worse.
Yeah, but she's powerless. Within the structure, she has no power at all. I mean, she has a media presence because Fox News gives it to her. They need a foil. They needed a foil for Trump. She was the foil.
Right. And the fact of a certain kind of independent democratized media, I would argue, you can say what you want about Twitter, but AOC has more Twitter followers than anybody in Congress.
Well, to quote Noam Chomsky, what can you really communicate over, 177 words or something?
Well, we got 240 characters now, so you can get a little paragraph going.
Well, there you go. There it is.
But the idea is, if you're saying, though, Chris, if you're saying that the problem is nobody's calling for mass protest, and AOC has 14 million Twitter followers or whatever it is, and we have seen the demonstrated power of her sending out a tweet and collecting millions of dollars overnight and directing millions of dollars of aid and getting boots places. She can do that. So I don't think it's fair to say that just because these people don't have power internally. I agree with you. They don't have power internally, but that's why they should be using the power of the people.
But they won't, because they'll be destroyed. They will end up. Bernie's not wrong. The machine will destroy them. I mean, look what they did to Cynthia McKinney.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a long list. That was largely over Palestine. Right. I mean, they're very unforgiving. I mean, you can just see example after example going all the way back to George McGovern. To 72, he gets the nomination. The Democratic leadership and the Republican leadership unite to destroy him. And then they take down his Senate seat. And he's out. He's finished.
Okay, so that was the, first, the important clip that I wanted to show you there, just, his breakdown on, he said that part of this, I agree with pretty much the entirety of this, who am I to question Chris Hedges? I mean, he has a much deeper analysis than I do. But there were certain parts I would push back on slightly, but I think that what he said here, it definitely rings true by and large, particularly his point. The one thing that I would push back on is that he said that they were bought, right? And the one thing about that, is that under that, the way that I frame, like, to me, bought is like you are a corrupted, financially corrupted politician. You've been purchased by some wealthy or special interest group or something like that. You've been funded by them, these large donors. They essentially, through the Citizens United, which allowed unlimited donations to political campaigns, you have a legalized bribery of politicians in the US political system. And we see that there are, all these corporate and establishment politicians, they are all bought by these different, major industries and corporations. The squad in AOC, they are not bought in that sense. And I just would completely disagree with that for sure. I don't believe that they are bought in that sense. They have not been bought by the fossil fuel industry or big pharma, or, the gun lobby or anything, the way that the Republicans and the establishment Democrats have been bought by these industries. Right. But because they get their funding, they sworn off corporate PAC money and most super PAC money and any kind of corporate money, and they take their funding from small dollar donations from everyday people, right? So they're not bought in that sense, right? And I don't think that that's the right framing of it for them and the right narrative for them. I accept it, if he means in the sense of like bought off by the by the career, sort of, the paycheck, the salary, the turn, sort of made complacent by it. Certainly, I think that he could mean it in that sense, and that I would agree with, and I do agree with. But I just want to make clear that I do not agree that they've been bought, and I think that it's important to be nuanced about this, because I think that it's an important point to make, to say that wasn't, we thought that alone was the solution. That's what TYT and Justice Democrats, Cenk Uygur and Kyle Kulinski founded Justice Democrats with this notion of, that we were going to, the problem was that our politicians have been bought and paid for. We need to put people in Congress that aren't bought and paid for in that sense. And we did that. We did that with these candidates. And then what we've seen is that they're almost just as ineffective as these other candidates, even though I think that their intentions are entirely different. And I think that's important. And I think that Chris Hedges, he says that here, he says, I don't see them as an enemy the same way that I see Chuck Schumer or Mitch McConnell as an enemy, right? Like I don't see these people as my enemy. And I don't think, and I don't think of them that way. And Chris Hedges doesn't see them as the enemy in that sense. They're not. We just have to recognize them and be critical of them as ineffective, right? They're just ineffective. And even though they may want the same things as us, they don't have the same sense of urgency. They've lost the sense of urgency. And it's something about, we shouldn't, I don't want to have such an individualistic analysis of it where I think, oh, it's just those people, and if we change the people and put better people, stronger people in there, that's somehow going to solve the problem. I just don't believe that that's the case. I think it's a systemic problem, and systemic problems require systemic changes, and putting different people, different inputs into the same system, it doesn't change a thing. The machine is the machine, and he says it, he says these people, the machine will destroy them, right? The Democratic Party machine will destroy them. And I think that it does over time. It wears these people down. I think even, to some extent, Nancy Pelosi comes in with better intentions and more progressive when she came into Congress, and with a more, even though she was way more corrupted, that she was actually corrupted on her way in, and she was wealthy on her way in. But I think even then these people come in with more sort of just with a more progressive thought, and then slowly over time they're pushed right and through our political system. And so in this case, I think the fact that they get that $174,000 salary and good health insurance benefits, and they're the first to be vaccinated, I think that it naturally causes you to lose a sense of urgency, right? And also you rationalize these things where it's not just that. Of course, I don't think that they're just like, greedy all for themselves and they're just happy with that. But I think they also rationalize their behavior in thinking, okay, well, it's better that I stay here and I stay in this seat and fight for this incremental changes, even though their rhetoric going into this was all existential crisis. This is all existential threats and climate crisis and the economic crisis and in the public health crisis that we're facing. And these are catastrophic. And we need we need radical solutions to these radical problems. And then as they become a part of the system, they slowly over time, it wears them down. And all of a sudden they don't have that same rhetoric. I honestly think, sadly, I think we're about to see it happen with Nina Turner. As much as I love Nina Turner, I think that she'll be a strong voice in Congress. I just don't think that she's going to be as effective. I think once you're on the inside of that system, think you have to operate differently. And honestly, what they're lacking in the squad is a sense of an understanding of power and how to wield power. And according to Chris Hedges, he believes that they don't have power. I do think, and Brianna Gray pushed back on this, and I do think that they do have some power, and I just think that they don't have an understanding and a willingness to exercise that power. And maybe Chris Hedges is right that by its very nature, by them entering into the Democratic Party, it was all designed to work out this way. And maybe that's the truth. I thought that there might have been a chance, or else I wouldn't have invested so much of my time and energy into fighting that battle if I thought that it was a guaranteed losing fight that wasn't going to help in any way. I wouldn't have fought that battle, but I certainly believed in it and believed that that was the right way towards getting people these things that we believed we needed. We said that they were so urgent: Medicare for all, a Green New Deal, workplace democracy, a dignified living wage of at least $20 an hour at this stage, because I'm done with this talk about $15 an hour. We've been talking about $15 an hour since 2012. It's time to start talking about $20 or $25 an hour, because we really need to be talking about $25 an hour, because whenever we enact these minimum wage increases, we're talking about increasing over typically a 5-year period or more sometimes, right? So we need to be talking about $25 an hour so that it can gradually reach the point where it's supposed to be already. If it had simply kept up with inflation and productivity, we'd already be at around $23 an hour. So we need to be talking about $25 an hour minimum wage right now, and not about the 15 anymore. But I think that these, sadly, these folks go in with all these great intentions, but they don't really have a strategy to get this stuff done. And according to Chris Hedges, he just says that they've been, he said, emasculated and they're powerless. And I do think that they are rendered powerless. I think that they had some power, and they could have shown it by banding together with the small band of progressives and push back against the removal of the $15 minimum wage. And they proved then and there that they just were either unwilling or unable to meet the moment, and that they weren't going to be, and we got to stop looking for sort of these saviors from the top down, these folks to come save us. And we got to start to get real about how we're going to do it just amongst ourselves and with, and within our communities, and to start to fight the fight there. Because sadly, I think that these folks are just, they've been co-opted into a system. And even if I went into that system, I worry that no matter that, it would chew up and spit out any of us. I met AOC before she became AOC, and before she won her primary, and I felt we talked, and it just felt like talking to any one of the folks that we talked to in this community. It just felt like talking to one of our comrades. And I know that she went in there with these same sort of intentions and pure intentions, but I think that it could happen to any of us, because you get in there and then it's all of a sudden, I better stay. And you can start to rationalize those things. And it's really easy to rationalize when you're collecting $175,000 a year and you don't got to work all that hard. And, it's not so bad. I don't want to, come across as if they don't, these people, the progressives, aren't working pretty hard. They work harder than some of these other politicians, but still not as hard as your average, laborer and working class person. So I think that when Chris Hedges speaks, I think it's important to listen, and he made some great points here. So just wanted to highlight that. All right. And Brianna Joy Gray mentioned AOC's Twitter power, and I do think that she had the power, the people behind her, but they're just unwilling to wield that power, and they don't understand and have an understanding of how to wield power. And I think that Chris Hedges agrees in that sense. So, all right, let's see what else we got here on the old agenda. I'll do one. Let me see. Chris Hedges talks about the importance of independent online media, and the significance of that. And then he also talks about Brianna Joy Gray asked him for some solutions. What does he believe solutions to all these problems are? I'll play that clip and just so I can get a clip of that. So I'll play this clip of one more clip from Chris Hedges in this interview, and then maybe chat about it on the other side. But I think it sort of speaks for itself. So one more Chris Hedges clip, just because he's awesome. This is Chris Hedges talking about, Brianna Joy Gray is going to ask him what does he believe the solutions are to, these crises that we face right now, the pandemic and economic crisis and just capitalism in general.
I'm sorry, I gotta be a stickler.
You know me, speed.
For the solution bit.
Oh,
that's what we're all waiting for with bated breath.
Bree's very solutions oriented. I'm problem oriented.
I was trying to get out of that. I think the solution is to stop asking what the solution is and to start asking what the moral imperative is. Mm-hmm. For instance, to say, well, if you won't pass the minimum wage, then you have become my enemy. If you won't release 2/3 of the people locked up in our prison system, which is 25% of the world's prison population, 40% of the people in our prison system have never been charged with physically harming another person. I think we have to draw a line based on, not on the practical, because it won't certainly at the inception be practical. It may never be practical, but that's our only hope. And it comes for standing up for our values, standing up for what we believe in. And I watched, for instance, throughout the world, in Eastern Europe and everywhere else, how these principled figures stood up in Palestine, in Central America. I covered the war in El Salvador, in Eastern Europe with Václav Havel. Václav Havel was a non-person from 1977 when he founded Charter 77 until 1989. I was in the Magic Lantern Theater with Havel every night during the Velvet Revolution. He was not a good speaker. He wasn't particularly charismatic, but everybody knew he wouldn't sell them out. Mm. Now, when you don't sell people out, like Fred Hampton, assassinated by the FBI in Chicago, then they are frightened of you, as they were frightened of Hampton. 21 years old. They're out there. They're there. But those people who can't be bought, those people who actually hold fast to a moral imperative, they frighten the state.
Following up on that, and I think this could possibly serve as our last question, something you've written about is anomie, nihilism as consequences of our imperial decline. And as to what you just said about being guided by our moral principles, America is full of false prophets and false creeds. You wrote a book about one. And every single person in the Christian right thinks they're acting authentically with their moral principles. So just to reiterate the question, what moral principles should guide us?
Right. Well, that's a good question, because that's the difference between moral absolutism and morality as self-reflection. Hmm. I mean, it's one of the reasons why I worship James Baldwin. I don't think you can understand America if you don't read Baldwin, fundamentally. I mean, not only, although, Baldwin grew up in the church too, his father was a minister. He said and he was a child preacher himself. He said he left the pulpit to preach the gospel. That's a Baldwin quote. But Baldwin, the power of Baldwin, like George Orwell, is that he had that moral core, but he was so hard on himself. Mm. And he was even hard on the Black community. He was just fierce. He was such a fierce truth teller. And of course, I would argue so incredibly prophetic. And so it's a matter of how you see yourself. And if you're a moral absolutist, then you see yourself as the embodiment of good. And that is very dangerous. But if you grasp a moral imperative, you're constantly struggling with your own capacity for evil, and it's there. I mean, Baldwin writes this devastating essay. After Martin Luther King dies, he has a suit, and it's a new suit, and he announces he won't wear it anymore. And he goes, and a friend of his who's still poor in Harlem, he grew up in Harlem, writes and said, well, give me the suit. And Baldwin just castigates himself for having lost touch with his own community. I mean, it's a really brilliant essay. You need that kind of constant self-criticism and self-reflection. That's the moral quality that I'm talking about, not the moral absolutism of the Christian right, which is a form of totalitarianism.
Chris?
That was, I thought that was just a powerful statement there. Chris Hedges talking about moral absolution versus moral absolutism versus morality as self-reflection. I think that's a concept that is something that every person should, grapple with and understanding morality through self-reflection, through self-criticism, right? And being able to reflect on our own behaviors, our own thoughts, and to try to grow from that, and constantly to understand that that's work that we constantly must do, right? And at no point, and this is why I really feel like we have to be a little bit more forgiving with people that we know we're allied with and that are on our side when they're, once we're past the point of like basic human decency and dignity, as long as those standards are met and we recognize people's humanity, I think that we have to have some room for people to be wrong about certain things, points of strategy. How do we get from point A to point B, not arguing about whether or not we should get from point A to point B. Do we need equality, justice, equity? We don't need to debate about those things, but how we get there. Yeah, there's going to be some reasonable points of contention there amongst people with in good faith and well-meaning people, and we should certainly give room for that, because we're constantly we're all growing and we're all learning, and it's something that we have to recognize, that we all have this capacity for evil within us, and it's just by nature of being a human being, according to Chris Hedges. And he talked about just believing in your principles, recognizing that like your principles, you have to, that's something that you're constantly building up and working on and developing, but also not thinking about like the question, what is the solution, so much as what is the moral imperative, right? Like, it doesn't matter, what the one exact solution is. We know we need to be fighting for this stuff. Like, we know universal health care, making sure that every person has has the health care that they need, has the food that they need, has the shelter that they need, has the education that they need. These are we know there's a moral imperative to do these things. And so we must fight for that, for people to achieve that level of dignity and equity. And so that's, it's not the question can't ever be, we don't have to worry so much about, what is the one particular solution, as long as we know we're all, are we pushing in that direction? Is that what it's about? And not trying to find the perfect solution every time necessarily, but knowing that we must be pushing forward. We must be fighting for these things. And just based on it's the right thing to do, right? We need to do this, because it's not right for any person. Who's going to be the person that decides which human beings go without shelter or food or healthcare? Nobody should have that authority over another living being. And so, or decide that nobody else gets to live on this planet, because we're gonna use up all the clean air and water on this planet and mine all its resources. We can't allow that. So we have a moral imperative to fight for these things, to continue to fight for these things. And so sometimes the solution's not so clear, and that's what we wrestle with every day on the show, and trying to come to the grapple with these issues and figure out what the right solutions really are. And that requires constant self-reflection and constant having ability to recognize ourselves not as some morally pure beings, but folks that are human and will err. And so therefore we just have to, try to be principled and develop a set of principles and live by those and stick by those. And that's why it's so important to hold a set of principles and to really believe in them and to fight for those things at all costs. And that's where we see a lack of that but from these elected officials like AOC and the squad. So even if they aren't doing it with any ill intention, there's certainly a layer of, you know, an unwillingness to fight at all cost, right? Because at all cost might mean at the cost of your cushy job, which I lost jobs trying to do what I believed was right and fighting for these things. And I think that it's a sacrifice that we all sort of have to be willing to make for the folks that are in a position that they can and not going to, you know, die without a job, essentially, you know. And these folks are definitely in that position as AOC, you know, the status that they have, they will have no, you know, AOC will have no problem ever finding a job again. So these are people that can risk that and will have a bright career ahead of them still, even if they do take a risk. And we're talking about them supporting wildly popular policy. So the idea that it's even a risk to take is not even the correct framing of this issue, to be honest. So please, if you haven't done so already, hit the like button, subscribe, share. I'm doing the stream later than usual. It's already after midnight where I am, but I'm just trying to get through as many stories as I can so that we can put some clips up. I got a couple of stories. Yeah, I got a couple of easier, lighter stories to do. So I'm going to try to power through these and see how much we can do within 2 hours here. So I'm going to keep pushing along. Let's talk about Meghan McCain. Let me see if I can find that story. Okay, yeah. All right. So with all of what's going on in the world with the anti-Asian hate and, you know, want to just, you know, say right off the top that stand in solidarity with Asian Americans and Asian folks all over the world. And, you know, as a black American, we know all about, you know, persecution and oppression and hate crimes being committed against us. And so, you know, we have to have, you know, we should be reflexively as Black people standing in solidarity with our Asian siblings, you know, our Asian comrades, and to lock arms with them and to be in solidarity with them and, you know, stand up against this sort of this hatred. And I mean, there's been so not before this spa shooting that happened last week in Atlanta, there were just all these instances of elderly Asian people being like sucker punched or ran up on by young people and pushed to the ground or assaulted and beaten and you know, just the one horrific story after the next. And it's really terrible stuff. And it's all under the guise, like, you know, we did a video on this show. We did an interview with Professor Christian Chun from University of Massachusetts. And it was a really great interview we talked about yellow peril and model minority myth. I highly recommend it. Check it out. I think that it was, you know, if foreshadowed some of these events, and, you know, we talked about these things being recurring, you know, issues moving forward that, you know, were spawned out of some of the return of this yellow peril rhetoric, this idea of like the dangerous other, the you know, dangerous Asian immigrant, or yeah, and so there's a lot of sort of rhetoric that comes around that. Yellow peril, you know, was born out of some of the, you know, it was an anti, you know, there was the Chinese Exclusion Act that was targeted Asian workers, you know, Asian, you know, immigrant workers and try to prevent them from coming to, in Chinese, you know, Chinese and East Asian immigrant workers, and preventing them from coming to the U.S. during, you know, this was when they were, you know, they were using, exploiting Asian immigrant labor here in the country to build railroads and for the gold rush. And you know, they've, you know, there's been this rhetoric of like, you know, anti-worker, we don't want these workers coming and stealing American jobs and taking American jobs. And so there was a lot of like sort of anti-worker sentiment that comes out of it, but, you know, born out of a racism and a xenophobia against Asian people, and in that case, particularly East Asian folks. And so here, you know, here we have Meghan McCain just saying some dumb shit on The View. Meghan McCain's one of the hosts of The View, and she just had some real audacity to come out with some wild this is just wild bit here. So here, I'll show you. Let's take a look here and a listen. And so this is Meghan McCain, Meghan McCain is the daughter of John McCain, who is a warmonger. He's a, Republican, he's passed away now, but he was a Republican politician, senator, ran against Barack Obama. But he is he's a U.S. imperialist, just a standard right-wing neoconservative. And he, so this is his daughter, who has the job on The View, and for the reason that she's his daughter, essentially. That's her qualifications, is that she's the daughter of John McCain. And so here she is on The View, and she says, let me play this clip here for you.
Are qualified to get into Ivy League. Excluded women farmers. And so we're going to a place where even if people need money, even if people are qualified to get into Ivy Leagues, race and gender is more important than your skill qualifications, the content of your character. It is not what Martin Luther King Jr. preached. I think this is a very, very slippery slope. I was very surprised to hear someone like Tammy Duckworth say something like this. She got a lot of blowback from a lot of people, not just on the right. And I think this is actually just the natural progression of identity politics. And I will say, just to put a cap on this, The View is 25 years old next year. We've only had one Asian American co-host this show. So does that mean that one of us should be leaving at some point because there's not enough representation? We're talking about, is identity politics more important than qualifications of a job? And I think that's a question going forward that the progressive left is going to have to reconcile.
Okay, and before we go, because we're going to go and take a break, eventually we're going to come back and talk.
All right, so, yeah, there you go. That's Meghan McCain talking about, is identity politics more important than qualifications? This is a white woman out here whose entirety of her qualifications, talking about, trying to perpetuate some myth of meritocracy, as if she achieved this job through some meritocratic means, right? She deserved this job, right? Why? Because of her qualifications, not because of her identity. She's literally on this she has this multi-million-dollar job because of her literal identity as the daughter of one Senator John McCain. She is not qualified for this job in any other way, shape, or form, more so than she is no more qualified for that job than I am. All right. And that's a show that I'm pretty sure has all women hosts, and still, all right, she's still not even, as qualified as I am for that job. Right. So this is seriously, like, all jokes aside, this is somebody who she has done nothing to deserve this job, this multi-million-dollar job, but she's out here talking about, this, are we going to use identity politics? Are we going to get rid of one of us? Who she's thinking, she's like, are we going to get rid of one of us and allow some Asian, just for the sake of representation? Are we going to allow some Asian person to come on and take one of our jobs? And so it's more of this, she's doing the same yellow peril rhetoric. And this is just racist, xenophobic language wrapped up in a pretty white supremacist little bow, and, U.S. imperialist. And she's talking about, she mentions Senator Tammy Duckworth, who is I believe is Asian American, and is a war, American war, like veteran. And so American veteran, but parents, Asian American, I believe. And she's like, talking about her and saying, oh, how could she say this? How could she talk about this in this way of, like, just basic, like, the idea of representation and people seeing certain representation. And somehow these racists always find a way to, like, bring in Martin Luther King into the argument. And it's like, this is not what this ain't it, chief. This ain't it, chief. This is not what Martin Luther King was talking about. And, Meghan McCain, she does this stuff all the time. And she's just a whiny, rich, spoiled brat who never had to work for a damn thing her entire life, got everything handed to her just based on her identity. And she'd be, you know, her family's well off. She'd be fine without this job. She'd still be a multimillionaire. She does not need this job, but she's taking up space that should be occupied by a decent left-wing woman of, you know, of some color, you know, give it to an Asian woman, you know, please, by all means, but just let them be left-wing, please, 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 please. So yeah, I just thought that this was hilarious and ridiculous and absurd. And, you know, yeah, What Up America says, they took our germs. You know, that's exactly what this reminded me of, that South Park. Just, they took our germs. So absolutely, that reeks of this. That reeks of this. Tammy says, throwback to John McCain saying how he, quote, hates the gook and, quote, will hate them as long as I live. Wow. Well, he dead now, but it lives on in his daughter, though. Yes. Damn. Wow. I didn't know that he said all that. Like, that's just why. Yeah, just wildly racist. So, you know, incredible. They're like father, like daughter here, right? And it's just wild that she's out here talking about, you know, pretending like she got her job based off of some sort of meritocracy when we all know what it was. It was entirely based off of her identity. And it's just a gross, you know, just some classism and racism and xenophobia all neatly packaged up. All right. One last story that I'll do here before we wrap, and just going to talk about some labor issues. Tammy says she is so day class A, very day class A, I would say. Let me pull up this next clip. All right, last story.
The final week of voting has begun in one of the most closely watched union elections in decades. Amazon workers in Bessemer, Alabama, are voting on whether to join the Retail, Wholesale, and Department Store Union, that's the RWDSU, and become the first unionized Amazon warehouse in the United States. Voting ends March 29th. Ballots have been sent to nearly 6,000 workers, most of whom are Black. Amazon has fought labor organizing at the company for decades, but Bloomberg is reporting Amazon workers in Baltimore, New Orleans, Portland, Denver, and Southern California are now also considering launching union drives. Nationwide, Amazon has over 1.3 million employees, making it the second largest private workforce in the United States behind Walmart. The unionization effort in Alabama has attracted widespread support, even from President Biden.
Today and over the next few days and weeks, workers in Alabama and all across America are voting on whether to organize a union in their workplace. This is vitally important, a vitally important choice as America grapples with the deadly pandemic, the economic crisis, and the reckoning on race. What it reveals the deep disparities that still exist in our country. And there should be no intimidation, no coercion, no threats, no anti-union propaganda.
Congress members Cori Bush, Jamal Bowman, Terry Sewell, and other lawmakers recently traveled to Bessemer, Alabama to support the unionization drive. Last week, Amazon worker Jennifer Bates, who's helping to organize in Bessemer, testified before the Senate.
All right. So, and that person testifying was a worker, an Amazon worker, Black woman. And all right, so you know, I just want to continue to draw attention to this story with this vote at Amazon. This is the final week of voting. If it goes through and they are able to successfully unionize this Amazon warehouse, it will be historic. It will be a historic win for labor. It will honestly be the biggest win for the left this year, and it will have ripple effects, absolutely. And honestly, it may have already had started those ripple effects, because Amy Goodman mentioned there, this is already inspiring potential unionization efforts in multiple other states and cities around the country at other Amazon facilities. So this is exactly what we need, and we need something. Amazon is the second largest employer in the country behind Walmart. This has an impact. You can't, you can't impact more employees with a single unionization effort like this, anywhere else in the country other than at a Walmart. If we can, I'm sure that things like this it is inspirational for folks, for workers at Walmart and other McDonald's and other workers, and especially low wage workers at these major corporations to begin to unionize. So this is important, an important story to follow. After this voting wraps up, we'll have a clear idea of what the next steps will be, how successful Amazon and all of their intimidation and anti-union practices have been. It's usually very effective. The anti-union propaganda, there is a lot of money behind that, and a lot of incentive for the capitalist class to pour millions and millions of dollars into that effort to try to stifle unions from ever coming into existence. And so I think what they're doing in Bessemer, Alabama is of great import, and something that we have to be in solidarity with and showing support for. Tweet out, whatever you can, tweet out and support. Donate if you can to their effort. They have mutual aid funds that they are, collecting money to try to support folks if they have to, for whatever needs, if they're intimidated by or fired by Amazon for trying to support a union. We want to be able to support those people, since they're doing something that benefits all workers everywhere, and they're doing it at great risk to themselves. And so just love to see it, wish them the best, and waiting with bated breath to see how this turns out. And I just want to keep highlighting the gross stuff that Amazon is doing to attack these workers and to try to deny them their right to unionize and to collectively bargain for better working conditions, which they deserve. They absolutely need. You have Jeff Bezos making $7 million an hour every hour for the past year. All right. Even when he was sleeping, all right, Jeff Bezos was making $7 million every single hour, all right? Just think of what you're talking about, paying a whole year's wages for, what is that? Like 14 employees every single hour, like at $50,000 a year. Like you could literally pay 14 people's salaries every single hour for an entire year. Like this is, in the middle of a pandemic, when these people were being paid less than a minimum, like less than a living wage. Why do we allow this to happen? Why, why does Jeff Bezos need $100 billion more in the midst of a pandemic, while these workers are sitting out there, peeing in bottles and unable to make ends meet, and having to, be on welfare and food stamps in order to survive? It's unacceptable. So shout out to, in solidarity with all of those workers. Fuck Amazon for all of their anti-union practices and for all the bullshit that they're trying to pull against these workers. And we just need to, show solidarity and continue to support them in every way that we can, and hope that they are successful with this effort, because it will absolutely have ripple effects throughout the country. And this will be this is the most important labor fight, of the 21st century, and in our lifetimes, quite likely, or at least in the past few decades for sure. So there, this could have a very important domino effect on the labor movement. All right, so that's all the stories that I'm gonna have time to cover today in 2 hours. And like I said, this is a later stream than usual, and I apologize for that. Just trying to get back into the swing of things and shake off some of the dust and the rust. So it was good to get back and to be able to be back in action and to chat with folks, and to be back to the movement and the work that we're doing here. So shout out to everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. Shout out to everyone who commented. If we have any comments that we want to pull up, we can pull those up. We can take some last comments. Tammy says, damn, united we bargain, divided we beg. That goes hard. Yeah, dope. Yeah, united we bargain, divided we beg. I love that. That is such a powerful slogan. That is dope. Yeah, united we bargain, divided we beg. And that's what it's been, just begging for crumbs, begging for scraps, you know, when we try to do this individually. And, you know, it just never works out the way that we want it to. Collectively is the only way we're going to gain power. And really, we need to go a step further than unions, honestly, and take it to democratic workplaces, because even unions have issues of hierarchy and indirect democracy. And we need more direct democracy. Just, you know, stop with the middlemen and all these layers of abstraction and just give the people the power directly. So, yeah. Anthony Sutton says, Amazon has unions in Europe. It's sad it's not happening here. Yeah, such a great point, Anthony. Thank you for that great point. That is very true. Amazon absolutely has unions in Europe. They you know, in other countries, in Germany and in France, and, you know, all around Europe, they have much stronger unions in those countries, and they are able to secure so much better working conditions for those workers there than we have in this country. And so it's a shame. It's absolutely a shame that it hasn't already happened here and hasn't been happening here for a long time. And we just lost the fight for 15, really, with this last relief bill. We thought that we could push for that. And since we weren't able to win it there, I think that these types of union efforts, honestly, can have a ripple effect that leads to enacting $15 minimum wage, you know, in these, at least in major corporations and all around the country. You know, Amazon was already pressured into lifting their wages to $15 an hour when Bernie Sanders applied pressure with the Stop Bezos Act, and it did enough to apply enough pressure to get them to budge and to offer a $15 minimum wage to their workers. So we've at least pushed for things like that, but there's so much more that those workers could gain, so many more protections that those workers could gain that they deserve. And so it's a great point, you know, that Europe does have that. And so it's not that Amazon can't be beaten in this regard, you know, and can't be fought on that front. They absolutely can. And it's already been proven. And it's our turn now, right? We need to do that here. So we got to throw all of our support behind these workers, because, you know, Amazon jobs are some of the only jobs that are left in a lot of places around the country, because Amazon has so thoroughly, and these major corporations have so thoroughly decimated small businesses that there's just no more sustainable small businesses around anymore. So in many communities, Amazon is the only job around. This is the only option that these workers have. And we you know, it could be any one of us. So we have to use whatever, you know, advantages that we have and show solidarity with these workers in every way, shape, and form that we can. And so, you know, trying to do our part here on this show by highlighting these stories and making sure that we draw attention to them, because the mainstream media, if you leave it up to them, they just act like this isn't even happening. They don't cover labor issues. They don't, because they have a vested interest in maintaining the status quo, and they are the same, you know, they're backed by the same corporations that are, you know, by Amazon and Walmart and Micro, you know, they're all they're advertisers, right? So they have a symbiotic relationship with them, and we need to recognize that and recognize that they have a class interest that they're trying to protect, and we need to fight to protect our class interest as working class people. And so we need working class solidarity across all lines: gender, racial, you know, sexual orientation, religion, you know, country of origin. Like, we need to have solidarity across all those lines. International worker solidarity, right? Workers of the world unite. Not just workers of America, but workers of the world, workers everywhere. And we need to fight for better working conditions for all workers everywhere. So, you know, that has to start with these sorts of efforts: unionization efforts, workplace democracy efforts. You know, we need to democratize the enterprise. That's the real move that we need to make if we're going to ever, you know, not have to keep on fighting these fights, right? Look at what capitalism sets up this fight, where you have to, it's employees trying to collectively get together to fight against the employer, right? And the employer Amazon is trying to fight against the union at all costs, and the employees are trying to fight and do everything that they can. And there's this tension, and it's such a waste, right? We have to waste all this energy and effort in our economic system on these fights, Why have these fights out in the first place? Let's just get rid of the employer-employee relationship. Let's end that dynamic entirely in our economic system and replace that. Make every worker, make everyone within an enterprise both an employee and an employer, right? We all have democratic control over our workplace. Then we all become both the employer and the employee, and there's no more tension between the two because we all are both, right? Or essentially, you know, we all are neither, or we all are both, however you want to look at it. But we're all the same, and we don't have to have this tension in this fight between these two competing groups within our economy, because we work competitively. Right now we have a competitive system. Instead, we need a cooperative system where we're working together with one another, instead of this very inefficient competitive system where we're trying to, it's a crab in a barrel situation where we're tearing each other down to get ahead. And it's it becomes this zero-sum game where in order for one person to gain, another one has to lose, when the reality is that there's enough resources here to go around, and we have enough food to feed every single human being on this planet, but we're just not distributing our resources correctly. And we need to recognize these injustices and these inequalities. And we got to do everything that we can to correct them. And we have to do that on an international level and fight capitalism with socialism. Don't fight capitalism with rainbow capitalism or black capitalism. We got to fight capitalism with socialism, right? And fight back against these machines that are just crushing us, crushing the people on this planet and the planet itself. And we got to fight back by building collective power. And love what they're doing in Bessemer, Alabama. Support it, wholeheartedly. Wish them the best, and we'll stay on this story, I promise you, and we'll let you know as soon as this union vote concludes. But it concludes this week, so we'll have news on that. Hopefully by weekend or beginning of next week, we'll know exactly where that union drive stands. All right, folks. So thank you so much to everyone for joining us today. Please, thank you for commenting. To everyone who commented, really appreciate that. Please, if you haven't done so already, hit the like button down below, subscribe to the channel if you're not already subscribed, and share this video out, because as you see, we just don't have the reach that we need and that we expect at this stage. With all the, we have going on 1,500 subscribers, but our streams sometimes have less than 10 people on stream because they're just not giving people the notifications and the alerts. And our channel is certainly being pressed, as we covered here earlier. And so we need your support. We need your help to help promote independent media. Support us financially if you can, because that's the crucial layer of support that we need right now. You can support us for as low as $1 a month, or just a one-time donation on Coffee at coffee.com/radical democracy, ko-fi.com/radical democracy. Links are in the description box below. You can also find us on Patreon at patreon.com/radical democracy if you're already on there. We appreciate the support by whatever means necessary. And we appreciate your support just for showing up, being here, engaging with us, talking with us, commenting, and hopefully sharing this video out. So thank you to everyone for being here with us tonight. And thank you to our super producer, Tammy, for all the amazing work that she does. Deeply appreciate her and everyone else in the community, all of our supporters. Shout out to all of you. You got nothing but our love and respect there. So solidarity to all of you, and to workers everywhere. We will be back again soon, I promise. Much more content coming soon. Hopefully some more interviews coming. So keep an eye out for that. And yeah, it's been real. All right, folks. Catch you soon. Oh, nope. We got some comments. Okay, hold on. Nope.
What Up donated 17 bucks.
Oh, What Up? Oh, shout out to What Up America. So What Up donated. Thank you so much for the donation. What Up? Deeply appreciate that. So What Up just dropped us a big donation, and we deeply appreciate that. We know how difficult it is, how just the struggle is real out here right now, and so we just so much appreciation for What Up, for all that they do. What Up America is the person responsible for our theme song to the show that we played at the beginning of this episode. That's What Up America, aka Plasmon. Check their work out on SoundCloud. Great work from them, and just deeply appreciated the work that they do. Shout out to our whole crew, and y'all know who all of y'all are, but thank you so much, because I know these are the folks that we can't thank you enough, and you do too much. And so we deeply appreciate it. And we have such a great crew of folks and a great community that support us. And we couldn't do it without you, truly. And we just hope to keep growing and to be able to make this a real sustainable thing where we can bring you more content and do this full time. And so just, you know, spread the word. And if you know anyone that might support, please spread the word and let them know it's for a great cause, workplace democracy. We are going to overthrow capitalism, one democratic workplace at a time. So shout out to you. What up? What up says right back at you. I appreciate the show. We appreciate you. Hope to have you on the show again soon. So thank you so much for all your support to everyone. Thank you to all of y'all. So I think with that, I will now bid you adieu. But let me know if I need to stick around. Are we good? Super producer? Super producer says, I think we're good. Okay. All right, folks. Thank you so much for everything. We will catch you again soon. All right. Peace. Hope y'all like the nail color today. I like